Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 2. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Again. Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Asuta mithunam tattu. Niritir jhagre prajaha. Niritir jhagre prajaha. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Dhambam mayam cha satruhan. Dhambam mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Asuta mithunam tattu. Niritir jhagre prajaha. Niritir jhagre prajaha. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Prajaha. Niritir jhagre prajaha. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Niritir jagre prajaha. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Niritir jagre prajaha. Maraji. Mrisha dharmasya bharyashid. Dhambham mayam cha satruhan. Asuta mithunam tattu. Niritir jagre prajaha. Word for word. Mrisha. Mrisha. Adharmasya. Of irreligion. Bharya. Wife. Asit. Was. Dambham. Bluffing. Mayam. Cheating. Cha. And. Shatruhan. O slayer of enemies. Asuta. Produced. Mithunam. Combination. Tat. That. Tu. But. Niritihi. Niriti. Jagre. Took. Aprajaha. Being childless. Translation. Another son of Lord Brahma was Irreligion, whose wife's name was Falsity. From their combination were born two demons named Dambha, or bluffing, and Maya, or cheating. These two demons were taken by a demon named Niditi, who had no children. Purport by His Divine Grace. It is understood herein that Adharma, Irreligion, was also born of Brahma, and he married his sister, Mrisha. This is the beginning of sex life between brother and sister. This unnatural combination of sex life can be possible in human society only where there is Adharma, or irreligion. It is understood that in the beginning of creation, Brahma created not only saintly sons like Sanaka, Sanatana, and Narada, but also demoniac offspring like Niditi, Adharma, Dambha, and Falsity. Everything was created by Brahma in the beginning. Regarding Narada, it is understood that because of his previous life, he was very pious and his association very good. He was born as Narada. Others were born in their own capacities according to their backgrounds. The law of karma continues birth after birth, and when there is a new creation, the same karma comes back with the living entities. They are born in different capacities according to karma, even though their father is originally Brahma, who is the exalted qualitative incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet mukam karoti vachalam pangulam gayate girim yakripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Meshwaram Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishnadustaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Prabhupada Priyadasaya Jagannatha Yatrananda Murtaye Bhaktasukena Krishna Kirtanena Narasimhena Rakshataya Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay. So in this chapter, we're about to start hearing about the story of Dhruva Maharaj from Maitreya Muni, who is speaking to Vidura. So I thought it would be also good to maybe zoom out a little bit from the chapter we're in and kind of see the overview of the canto, not only the canto, but this conversation that's happening between Maitreya Muni and Vidura, right? This conversation begins in the beginning of the third canto, actually. Vidura, during the gambling match that was happening between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, being unable to change the mind of anyone there in the assembly, being unable to convince them that what they're doing is wrong, and his own brother Dhritarashtra completely ignoring him, he gives up and he decides to go on pilgrimage. So it's described, he leaves his bow at the door, which is actually quite astonishing because many times when we think of Vidura, we do not think of him as a great fighter. But actually right here in the verse, you see the word Ashatruhan is used, someone who destroys his enemies. Maitreya is describing or addressing Vidura as the destroyer of enemies. And we do not generally think of Vidura as a great fighter, but he was. He was an amazing fighter. He was, brother of Pandu and Dhritarashtra. Both of them are great, great Maharathis. And so it's described that he left his bow at the door and gave up everything and went on pilgrimage during the gambling match. And he went first to all the holy places, and while on his pilgrimage, the entire battle of Kurukshetra happened, and the battle of the Yadus happened, where they killed each other on the banks of the Yamuna. And so while he was on pilgrimage, he heard this news that everyone was destroyed. So then he went to Dwarka to see his friends and see what's left of the Yadu dynasty, and he met up with Uddhava. And then he had a long conversation with Uddhava about the pastimes of the Lord, the pastimes of Krishna, different things. And they both were in great separation from the Lord's association. Uddhava described the many wonderful pastimes to him. and also told Vidura that at the time when Krishna was going to leave this world, he was talking about Vidura, and this greatly pleased, at the same time caused Vidura a lot of pain because more separation from the Lord. So after Uddhava was about to leave, he told Vidura that you should go see Maitreya Muni, who's nearby, and discuss with him, inquire from him all the questions you have. And so Vidura he went to Maitreya Muni and he asked him many questions, and throughout third canto and beginning of fourth canto, there's so many questions that he poses to Vidura, to Maitreya Muni, but I think one of the main ones he asks is that which activities are able to take one back to Godhead? That's the gist of the question. He asks, by what activities can one traverse this material world and go back to Godhead? That's the main question he asks. And so you'll see throughout third canto and fourth canto, through many different stories, Maitreya Muni is showing the example of these people by which we can understand so many important lessons. Like the story of Daksha in particular is describing the futility and the difficulty of performing materialistic karmakandic activities, and how difficult it is, right? With one small mistake or one small overlook, exactly the opposite outcome can come, right? So, and then he's describing Dhruva Maharaj's story, which we're about to start, and that's the process of bhakti in which one surrenders unto the Lord and performs devotional service. And so in this way, he's showing the futility of materialistic karmakandic activities and the benefit of pure devotional service. So by doing this, by this discussion, we learn many important lessons. And at the end of this canto, at the end of canto number 4, then Vidura finally is pleased. I wouldn't say pleased, but all his questions answered, and he's very grateful, and also in great ecstasy after hearing so many pastimes of the Lord and pastimes of his devotees. He concludes in the 31st chapter of this canto. He says that after hearing from you, I understand that only by following the footsteps of great devotees can one go back to Godhead, which is the conclusion of the entire conversation of 2 cantos. Right. So sometimes because we hear one verse a day, one chapter, maybe every 2 or 3 months, sometimes we're very focused in one spot, and then we forget the timeline or the conversation path or the purpose of each of these chapters or cantos. And so it's always good to, when you're reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, to go back and understand why this conversation is happening. Who's even speaking? Sometimes we don't even know who's speaking within a chapter. So it's always good to remember this. One time, one devotee, he actually made a big chart. It was like a big graph describing exactly the conversations, the threads of conversations, because already now we're in a third conversation. So Sutta Goswami is talking to Shaunaka Rishi about what Sukadev Goswami is talking to Parikshit Maharaj about what Maitreya Muni is talking to Vidura. Right? So sometimes you get like 5 of these in a row, and then you get confused what's happening, who's talking, why they're talking. And so it's always good to zoom out, to understand what's happening again, and then you'll be able to understand the overall picture and take it more meaningful. Okay? So coming back to the verse in this chapter, Prabhupada is talking about how Brahma, he's created not only the saintly living entities such as the rishis, which was described yesterday in the class, but he also created different demons. He was tasked with creating or populating the entire universe. Along with the population of the entire universe are the results of both good and bad activities, the demons and the demigods, the heavenly planets and the lower planets. So these creations, such as adharma, right, falsity, damba, bluffing, cheating, maya, these are all, how would I say, functions of this material world, the way that it works. Sometimes we might think that, a common question we get asked is, if God is all good, why did he create maya? Why did he create suffering? Why do people suffer? And so we have to understand that this material world is meant for one singular purpose, is for us to understand that we are not supposed to enjoy separate from the Lord. And without maya, we would not be able to even try to enjoy without the Supreme, without knowing our eternal position. It's kind of like, if you knew the truth about everything you're doing and the temporary nature of this material world, it's very difficult to actually enjoy anything, right? Some people go into great depression after someone dies, right? Someone dies, and then their whole world, their whole bubble of enjoyment is burst, because they're like, wait a minute, this place is full of suffering, and it's very difficult for them to enjoy again, because that bubble is popped. So the spiritual, in a much greater feature, the Lord, He's putting us into this bubble thinking that we can enjoy separate from Him. We can enjoy this material world, that this material world has something nice to give us, and we can actually derive some pleasure out of this temporary nature of this material world. Without this bubble, it's almost impossible to do that. And so therefore the Lord created Maya because of our desire to enjoy separate from Him. And because we are trying to enjoy in this material world, the Lord also gives us guidelines. You perform this, you do these activities, you will get this result. You perform these activities, you'll get that result. And therefore that good and bad feature of the material world is there, and when we perform bad things, then that bad karma is waiting for us in our future. And so therefore it's not the Lord who's causing these bad things to happen to us, it's us that's causing it to happen due to our past activities. Yes, we do not maybe remember everything we did in our past lives, but as described in this chapter, that the karma follows you birth after birth. Your subtle body follows you, right? Mind, intelligence, and false ego follows you. Along with that comes karma. You go birth to birth like these people, they're sons of Brahma. One would think it's the beginning of creation, these beings are sons of Brahma, how can they be bad? How can they be irreligion? No, because their past activities has deemed them fit to take birth in such a situation, such a quality. And therefore, there's different processes in this material world for us to minimize this karma that we're carrying around, to minimize what we bring into this world by the process of samskaras. Right? Samskaras are considered a purificatory process. Right? And different samskaras are meant for different parts of purification, but they're all overall trying to just ease our load that we're carrying of past karma, and then it would help us and it will aid our devotional service because we'll have to carry it around less. And it's from very before conception of the child all the way through his last breath when he passes away. So that the lifespan is full of samskaras and different things that are supposed to be done to purify one. Right? Beginning with Garbhadan, where you are putting yourself in a certain level of Krishna consciousness in which you attract a certain type of soul, a certain type of personality to come into your family. Without Garbhadan, you may get anyone, according to your consciousness. If your consciousness is impure, you will attract an impure a person with a certain karma, let's say a certain track record, a certain past life. With a certain level of Krishna consciousness, you attract a different soul. And then after that, then you have so many other samskaras that are trying to take away that karma from the living entity that came, and not only that, take away the karma that you project onto your children. Right? We do not want to baggage our children with different imperfections or anarthas or different karma that we carry. We do not want to go to them. They have enough to carry on their own. Right? So different samskaras are meant to cut that line for us to not to give anything to them, and also to purify them. And like that, through all the stages of their youth, going up to marriage, then after marriage, is all things to purify them. So they're able to more easily surrender to the Lord, more easily get over their anarthas, more easily become Krishna conscious. Right? So it's very important, very important. You can imagine Brahma, of course he did these samskaras. He is the supreme person. But these people had such karma coming from past lives that it was their karma that they were going to have to live as those demons, as those entities responsible for degraded actions. And that in that way they're both burning their karma, and in their next life they'll have a greater birth. Right? So Brahma, he's tasked with everything, with both the good and the bad. There's many stories in the Puranas and in the beginning of creation in which we see this, like the grandsons of Brahma, or let's say Kardama Muni, right? Kardama Muni, he had many wives, and one of his wives were Kadru and Vinata, two of his wives, right? Vinata was the mother of Garuda and Aruna, and Kadru is the mother of all the snakes. And you hear the pastime of Garuda and the snakes are very evil, they're jealous, they're greedy, right? And so you would say, these are the grandsons of Brahma, how can they be such? No, it's their karma, they were born as snakes, and that is the nature of snakes. Yeah? Also, Also, there's the pastime as the pastime goes on. Anantasesh, right? He was born in the same family. He no longer wanted to be associated with the evil nature of snakes. And so what did he do? He performed austerities to be freed from the family of snakes. So Anantasesh is no longer the first snake. Vasuki is the first snake, even though Ananta is his elder brother. Ananta became the servant of the Lord and achieved the platform where he's no longer considered a member of that family. Of course, we understand in the internal sense, Ananta is an expansion of Lord Balaram, but in this material world, there's the pastimes that show, just like Narada Muni. It's describing here the Narada Muni due to his previous birth. What previous birth? Brahma is just starting creation. Brahma just came into existence. So how can we understand this pastime of Narada Muni in which he was born as a son of a maidservant, took association of the Brahmanas? This happened many, many, many kalpas, many, many Brahmas, many, many creations ago. But Narada Muni continues in that life. He's born into this life already at that position of Narada due to his previous actions of becoming a devotee. Right? So, Ananta in this Ananta in a similar position, eternally he's the associate of the Lord, the bed of the Lord, he's the expansion of Lord Balaram. But in this creation, right, where it's described the pastime, where he frees himself from that family and becomes a servant of the Lord. Right? So, going back to the point where Brahma, he created the laws. Well, the Lord created the laws, but Brahma created this universe and the way the universe functions. Sometimes some demons, due to their great power, they managed to try to change the laws of the universe. For example, Hiranyakashipu. Right? He made it in such a way that irreligion would cost pious credits, and religion would cost impious credits. And because of that, Lord Nrsimhadev had to come to destroy him, because he started flipping the universe on its head. If one performed impious activities, he would attain the heavenly planets, because Hiranyakashipu owned the heavenly planets at that time. Right? And if one performed pious activities, he would fall down into lower stages of life. So he flipped the whole way the universe functions. And therefore everyone is scared of him. Everyone in the creation was scared of him because of the power that he had. Right? He was also a grandson of Lord Brahma. He was a grandson of Lord Brahma, right? So we have to understand that the Lord created this entire universe, both ways of function, the good and the bad. That does not mean that the Lord is under the control of this material world, or that he is guilted with creating something bad. No, it's our desire to enjoy separate from the Lord, and therefore the Lord created the way the universe functions. And part of the way the universe functions is that if you perform something bad, you have bad karma, and you have to suffer that bad karma. Prabhupada gives the analogy that the state or the government creates the jail for people who are suffering. That does not mean that that's the only thing they created, or they created that out of their own desire. No, they have to give some sort of facility for those people who want to perform bad activities. If those people perform bad activities, are allowed to roam free and do whatever they want, there'll be chaos and mayhem in the universe. Right? So therefore, the Lord has to create both, the results of good and bad activities. All because of our desire to enjoy separate from him. Right? Then Prabhupada goes into purport talking about bluffing and cheating, right? In the verses, talks about bluffing and cheating. And many times Prabhupada will talk about how bluffing and cheating is one of the main characteristics of this age of Kali. We see now and before, in the time of Prabhupada, it was very common people saying that I'm God, right? I'm God, I'm Vishnu, I'm the Supreme Controller, come surrender unto me. And even they would quote verses from Bhagavad Gita describing how they're God, and simply saying, I said in Bhagavad Gita, I said this, I said that. Many rascals, as Prabhupada would describe them, right? This is simply because they're trying to fulfill the need and desire of the people at that time. People at that time were searching after something, some greater meaning, after all the wars that happened, right? The whole hippie movement came and they were looking for something greater. Who am I? What am I doing here? And so people taking advantage of that, bluffing and cheating, saying, I am God and I know the process for you to go to wherever you want or to achieve what you want. And so for the desire of fame, gain, money, they made so many lies up, describing so many different processes in which you can achieve whatever you desire, right? And there's many funny stories. My Guru Maharaj, just the other day I was hearing that one of his god brothers went to a darshan of one such false god. And he told him, if you're God, he had a moment where he was able to speak. He said, if you're God, then lift a mountain just like Krishna did. And so the yogi, the god, closed his eyes and says, there, I'm doing it. And so the yogi said, what do you mean you're doing it? The devotee said, what do you mean you're doing it? Where is this mountain floating? He says, it's far, far away. It's floating. You just cannot see it because I haven't given you spiritual eyes. Just like I said in Bhagavad Gita, right? Dadami, right? I will give you spiritual eyes and you can, right? Pashyatam mama yoga aishwaryam, right? See my yogic opulence. She said, I didn't give you spiritual eyes, therefore you cannot see it. Right? So what kind of rascaldom is this? There's so many other instances where they would quote that same verse, right? They would say, if you're God, show your universal form, show your, Virat Rupa. And they would say, I'm showing it, you just don't have the eyes to see it. You're not pure, so I won't give you the eyes to see it. It was a classic excuse of that time. Right? These yogis, they have knowledge. They read Bhagavad Gita and they managed to, use it to their benefit. So many fake gods and gurus would come up trying to fulfill that desire and need, cheating the people and the masses to attain their fame, their power, their money. Right? Even now, there's so many bogus ways and people bluffing and cheating us, cheating everyone. Right? There's the whole weight loss movement that's so big, and everyone has the remedy and the cure and the secret medicine and the secret workout. They'll work for you. They're all bluffing and cheating. Right? Because why? Because now that's what the people want. Before that was, stay high forever, right? That was the hippie movement. So people wanted that. That's what people came to fulfill that desire. You go to India, it's, hundreds and hundreds of fake gurus and sadhus and so many people all trying to bluff and cheat their way to fame, glory, and money. So this cheating propensity and this propensity to desire for fame and glory is something very integral to this age of Kali. And we have to make sure that we do not fall into this trap. We do not fall into this desire for fame and glory, and therefore become a cheater just as they are. Yeah? So we can understand from this purport of Srila Prabhupada and from this verse that these personalities were all came into being for a particular purpose, for a particular desire of the human beings, for a particular desire of the jivas. And they're part of the function of this material world. They're part of the function of this universe. That certain actions bring certain results. And therefore we have to be very careful to follow the prescribed actions given to us that will give our desired result. We cannot cheat our way going back to Godhead. We cannot cheat our way to bhakti. We have to follow the prescribed ways described by Rupa Goswami, by Sanatana Goswami, nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction. Right? There's this process. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. That's the way in which we're going to go back to Godhead. That's the process, and we can choose. Right? And then in that way, eventually, we will become pure, and we'll be able to go back to Godhead. So, it is a very wonderful chapter now starting, and many more chapters to come. The story of Dhruva Maharaj is very, very amazing, and very inspiring, and awe-inspiring at the same time, seeing the young boy dedicate himself with such a strong desire that in the beginning was something material, right? He wanted to have a palace greater than his father's. He wanted to have a kingdom greater than his father's. He wanted to be more powerful than his father. But by the purification of the association of Narada Muni and the instructions of Narada Muni, that desire became purified. And he was fully purified and eternally happy in the association of the Lord. So much so that the Lord gave him eternal association in Dhruvaloka. So he's counted as one of the great devotees. And we can take example from the story we're about to understand and the story we're about to hear in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam of his pastime. So we can look forward to that to come. Yeah? One tiny little thing in this verse also is described a personality, Niditi. Nidriti, it's not described in this purport, but in other purports and places, Prabhupada describes him as the personification of death. He's the personification of death and sinful activity. Both kind of go hand in hand, but death particularly. And so he's one of the eternal associates of Yamaraj. Yamaraj has two associates that are right next to him at all times. It's death and time. Time and death are always next to him. And so it's described that when Yamaraj goes anywhere, those two beings come. Sometimes they're described as weapons, sometimes they're described as persons. But actually in Ramayana it's described that when Ravana went to Yamaraj to defeat Yamaraj, and there's a huge battle of Ravana with Yamaraj, then death personified wanted to kill Yamaraj, wanted to kill Ravana right there and then. He was ready to, but Yamaraj, being a Mahabhagavata, understood that no, it wasn't time. Right? There's a whole pastime going to happen. So he simply retreated, so to speak, from the battle. And death had to be controlled. And there's a whole discussion between death and Yamaraj, saying that no, it's not the time. There's time, time is supposed to come. The Lord has his pastimes in such a way. And death is saying, no, but look at this man, look what he's doing. Basically what he was doing when he went to hell was freeing everyone who was suffering in hell. He didn't like that people committed sinful activities which he thought were perfectly fine, and they were suffering in hell. So he went there and he freed everyone in hell so they wouldn't have to suffer anymore. And Ravana. Yeah, and there's a huge battle between Ravana and Yamaraj and the Yavandutas. It's very far out. And so there's many discussions, Yamaraj talking with death, Yamaraj talking with time, Yamaraj talking with Ravana. But it's quite far out. But this personality, death and time, are eternal associates of Yamaraj. So I thought I would just point that out. So I'll finish there. If there's any questions or comments on this text. Yes, Prabhu.
Just I have a question, but on the last note, what you made is funny, that bad persons, or like demonic persons, they always hide behind charity, as Ramana was thinking, they're all suffering in hell, I freed them from hell. But it's not working like, but it's still going on, same mentality. My question is a little bit related to this, because sometimes we see, when we read the Bhagavatam or the Puranas, then we see actually that what we know as demigods, they act sometimes not so pious, quite in a nasty way, sometimes even, Indra is the best example, so many things what we can, how you can do that, it's almost demonic. And then you see, this what is to us present as the demons, basically the sons of Diti. They are, like Bali Maharaj or Shukracharya, sometimes even Hiranyakashipu, gives instructions were quite moral and quite, okay actually. So what makes a demon, and what makes a demigod? Only the birth by the different mothers?
No, there's well, thank you, Prabhu. There's the first point you pointed out, and actually the answer to the second point is both in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is describing the nature of the demons. And so the demons are saying, Isharoham ahambogi, Siddhoham balavansuki, right? So one of the things that they're saying in that verse is that I will perform some activity, some charity, and therefore I will become powerful and happy. And so they understand the concept of charity. They understand that I perform a certain activity, I will gain a certain power and result. And their intense attachment to the result of that activity is strong. And you'll see so many, like Hiranyakashipu, how did he become powerful? Right? He performed austerity. He understood, I will perform austerity and charity, and therefore I'll become powerful. And God has nothing to do with it. It's simply a machine. It's a vending machine. You put something in, you get something out. And for them, they have no understanding that the Supreme Lord is the one who created this whole system and is the one who's giving the results. But their intense attachment to that result and that vending machine, I like that analogy, the vending machine of this material world, is causing them to perform these activities. And therefore, sometimes their activities are moral because they understand that dharma or artha, right? Even the function of karma kanda, it works. And therefore, to achieve their power, their knowledge, their wealth, they perform, so to speak, what to us seem moral activities. And they gain that power. And on the other hand, the demigods, sometimes out of intense attachment to their level of enjoyment, they perform activities that are irreligious. And therefore they have to suffer. Indra, so many different curses come to Indra, and he's generally the scapegoat and the head example of all these different things. But you'll see, if you start talking about the demigods, it's just a world of prajalpa, of how many activities this person with that person, and this person with his wife, and that wife, and this daughter, and it's just such a mess up there. Because of the great attachment and great level of sense gratification, where morality no longer plays a role so much, and it's just the desire of the senses. That's the limit of your enjoyment. Whatever you desire, you do, because enjoyment is their goal, right? And so one of the main characteristics is that when the demons fall into problem, they turn to, I need to do something else. I need to change the plan. Let's regroup. Let's think of something else. We can figure it out. We have the power. While the demigods, they do something wrong. They get the result of their wrongdoing. And what do? Oops, let's go to Krishna. Let's go to Vishnu. Let's go to Brahma. Let's figure out, right? They understand that there's a higher power and Lord Vishnu is in control. They make mistakes. Indra makes mistakes out of his attachment. He's always paranoid that this demigod and this sage is going to come and take his place, right? In the example of Narayana and Rishi, right? They were completely above this material world and transcendental, but because they were performing such austerities and gaining such power, Indra became worried, right? He didn't know that they have zero desire for the heavenly planets. So he sent Cupid there with the Apsaras, and there's that whole pastime. Right? So many different examples where Indra just is always paranoid of anything and anyone. Right? We just heard the other day, we were talking about Vishwarup, right? When Indra took Vishwarup as his guru, and Vishwarup started performing sacrifices, but because the grandfather or uncle, maternal uncle of Vishwarup was a demon, part of his sacrifices were going to the demons. And so Indra became paranoid that my priest, he's offering things to the demons. They're going to become more powerful. They're going to conquer us again. So he killed his own priest. Right? How can he do that? He's paranoid because that level of attachment to their enjoyment, they're so worried they're going to lose it that they don't mind suffering the results of their impious activities to quote unquote maintain their material enjoyment. But the main difference between demons and demigods is what happens after something goes wrong, right? Well, who do they turn to? Do they turn to their own, intelligence, or they give and surrender to the spiritual, to the supreme being, right? So you see that constantly. The demigods do something wrong, they fall from their posts. What do? The Lord comes to save them. The demons do something wrong, we never hear from them again. Yes, Suru. Something else on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand your thread of thoughts, but still I'm a little bit, because that what you just described about Indra, that's quite demonic, and he needs also many times big lessons, then he understands. Really the Lord makes an effort to really teach him and preach to him, and also with Brahma or something like that. So it seems, although I know it's not true, but it seems always that the Lord is partial toward the demigods. The demons, they also bewildered, something goes wrong, they go to Shukracharya. Now you can say, okay, Shukracharya was not a Vishnu Bhakta in that sense, and therefore maybe, but you see also this level of they surrender also to Shukracharya.
Well, we see that because the demigods, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, to my devotees, right? I am partial in that way because they surrender unto me. To the level that if someone surrenders unto me, to that level I reciprocate. And so the demons, they do not surrender at all to the Lord, and so the Lord has no facility or no opportunity to reciprocate with them. But the demigods are eternally surrendered unto the Lord. And therefore, whenever they come into the problem, even due to their own attachments, and foolishness, they surrender to the Lord at the end. And so the Lord is able to rescue them, save them, protect them. And in the cases of Sukracharya or Bali Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, so many different, these are all beings that either at some point in their life came into contact with the Lord and became purified, and from that point on, they're devotees. Like in the case of Sukracharya, it happened in the pastime of Bali Maharaj. That when Bali Maharaj, after he promised Vamanadev the 3 steps of land, Sukracharya told him not to. Right? He's Vishnu in the form of a Brahmin. He's going to take everything from you. Bali Maharaj stuck to his to Dharma. He said no. He comes in the form of a Brahmin. Even if he was Indra, I would give him what he desires, because that is the law. You give to Brahmin whatever they desire, right? So even if he was Indra, my enemy, I would still do, right? And then also it's described that Sukracharya, desperate to stop Bali Maharaj, he entered into the water pot, because according to Vedic rituals, when anything is given to someone, it's given with water as the witness. And so one of the ways that they do it is they put water into the hand of the giver, and the giver pours that water into the hand of the receiver. And so water is the binding testimony that this happened. It's like signing the contract. Yes, I'm going to give it. And water becomes the witness, Varuna, eternally pure. And so Shukracharya went into the water pot and blocked the water pot. And so Vamanadev, he took a kusha grass and he cleaned the spout of the water pot, and he poked Shukracharya's eye that was inside. And so therefore Shukracharya is half blind, he has one eye. But at that point, Shukracharya became blind and spiritually conscious, because he understood of his foolishness. And so from that point on, Shukracharya is no longer mentioned. He is mentioned sometimes in other Puranas, but he's considered a devotee of the Lord. Because at that point, being blessed by Vamanadev, through that strong lesson, he had sight again. A similar pastime happened with Bhrigu Muni. Bhrigu Muni, he was blessed because Bhrigu Muni was so enraptured in his meditation and his reading and his studies that sometimes when he was walking and reading or meditation, he would kick his feet and trip over and get injured in so many different ways. And so I forgot who blessed him, but someone blessed him to have eyes on his feet. So he could walk anywhere he wanted while he's in meditation and samadhi and reading and doing his studies, and he would never fall or trip. And so after he went and kicked Vishnu on his chest, then Vishnu massaged his feet and poked the eye. And so Bhrigu became blind and full of sight, because he understood his foolishness and the greatness of Lord Vishnu. Right? Because Vishnu massaged his feet, said, "Your feet are hurting from kicking my stone chest. Please let me massage them." And so at that point, Krishna poked that eye that was on his feet, and to make him blind in the material sense and full of sight in the spiritual sense. Anyway, side note. But Shukracharya at that point became a devotee. Bali Maharaj became a devotee by seeing Vamanadev and becoming completely enraptured, full of ecstatic love for Vamanadev. Right? So he became a devotee, and from then on, well, even before he was following the process of Dharma, but from then on he became a devotee. Right? There's so many other asuras also who became devotees through that process of association, either with great devotees or the Lord. And from then on, the Lord favors them. Right? Vamanadev is the doorkeeper of Bali Maharaj. Where? In Patalaloka, in the hellish planets. There's the kingdom of Bali Maharaj, and Vamanadev is the doorkeeper. He stands there with a club and with a sword, eternally, protecting the city of Bali Maharaj. Right? How can the Lord do that? He's a demon. No, he's his devotee. So therefore, the point that Ramananda Prabhu is so kindly edging me towards is that the Lord favors his devotees, right? And it's all because of that verse where Krishna describes, to the level that someone surrenders to me, to that level I can reciprocate. So the demigods are surrendered. But because of their intense attachment and the level of their enjoyment, they're forgetful. And sometimes they perform activities that are horrific in some ways or irreligious. But afterwards, once they do that and they're suffering the results, they still turn to the Lord because of their devotion. And many classes ago, we were describing the level of enjoyment of the demigods, and through that we can easily understand how they're able to get distracted and how they're able to become forgetful and become blind by attachment to that level of enjoyment that they can do such things. Is that okay, Ramananda Prabhu?
Yes.
Yes.
But I have more questions, but I want to see if somebody else.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Brian.
So I would like to ask how we should consider like Hiranyakashipu's strength. So does he become so strong that even stronger than Lord Brahma, for example, like so that he was able to flip upside down the whole planetary system, so the whole basically creation? Or like shall we consider then maybe Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva that are considered the strongest, I guess, in the whole creation? Then they just could foresee that pastime of the Lord would be taking place, so they would just like let Hiranyakashipu do whatever, and yeah. So
well, it's a little bit of both, but in the case of Lord Shiva is supremely powerful, and and Shiva being Sadashiva, right, out of this material world, he's fully cognizant and knows that the Lord's going to come with certain pastimes and certain things will happen. And therefore he's Vaishnavatam Mahasambhu, Vaishnavanam Mahashambhu, right? He's the greatest devotee. So he's a separate category. I don't think we can put Shiva and Brahma in the same space. Lord Brahma, after giving the boon to Lord Shiva, because Brahma lives in that level of the material world, he's beyond the effects of anything that happened in this realms. Right, one day of Brahma, how many Hiranyakashipus come and go, right? How many in 1 hour, you know? So we can't. He doesn't necessarily mean that he's not powerful enough to destroy Hiranyakashipu. It might have been, but he also knows that the Lord is going to come for a certain pastime. The Lord comes. I mean, if you imagine on the day of Brahma, how many times the Lord descends for performing his pastime. So therefore, Brahma knows now is the time for another incarnation of the Lord. But also it's described that Brahma, after the pastime of Hiranyakashipu, when Brahma came to see Lord Nrsimhadev, then Nrsimhadev rebuked him and told him to do not give such boons to such foolish people, right? And there's that verse, lotus-eyed one, as in Bhagavatamrita, where he's describing that. And he says, you know, oh, you who were born from a lotus, why do you act so foolishly and give boons to such foolish people, right? Better not to, and that whole pastime is described. So it's a little bit of both, I would say. For example, Jambavan, right? He came from Lord Brahma in the very beginning of creation, and he's eternally in the pastimes of the Lord, right? He's there in Ramachandra's pastimes. He's there in the other pastimes of the Lord. Any old paintings you see of different incarnations of Vishnu, you'll see Gaura, Hanuman, Jambavan, 4 Kumaras, Narada Muni. They're always there in the paintings because they're eternally there watching the pastimes of the Lord. And so Jambavan, he always sees Ramachandra's pastimes. It's always like a constant. It's a movie he can watch billions of times. But he never interferes with the pastimes of the Lord, right? He never is how would I say, gets tired of it or tries to change it in some way. It's always ever fresh for him. So he tells Hanuman to remember his powers. He tells Hanuman to go get the herbs. And that's the role he plays in the drama of the Lord's pastimes. And so he never gets tired of it. And so Brahma in a similar way, right, you can think of it both ways, but Brahma in a similar way, he's seeing the pastimes of the Lord happen again and again and again. And so he's not going to interfere with the pastimes of the Lord. In other ways, he's facilitating it. Does that make sense?
Earlier spoke about the topic of samskara, and so I'm just wondering, it's the karma. I mean, it's all related. We have a karma, what we bring with us, and with that karma, we come in a situation, maybe we get parents who perform samskaras. That's some sort of karma already, right?
Yes.
And then also, but we also get the load of the karma of the parents. As you said, we don't want to load them with our karma, but in other sense, it's also their karma to kind of get our karma. So that's, so how we can understand that samskaras still purify that given karma.
Well, I mean, karma is quite a broad sense, right? Like you can say that it's the karma of the child to be born in a family that has a certain amount of wealth, a certain amount of fame, a certain amount of facility, right? That's also karma. That's karma. But we don't want to give on to our child that are mainly anarthas and things that are impediments in our devotional service, right? We do not want, let's say we have a great desire for fame or glory or an intense attachment to a certain particular anartha that we have, right? We do not want that to go on to the child, right? The lusty desires, the easily succumb to anger, or different things like that. That's what we do not want the child to get, and therefore we pray to the Lord to please cut that, and so it doesn't go on to them. But of course, there's karma that the child suffers and will suffer just by being our children, because of our situation, the karma that we're going. We're simply not want to baggage them with I don't want to say subtle karma, but I would say the anarthas that we have, right? We don't want that to go to them. They will have their own anarthas, they will have their own karma that they bring. We don't want them to be baggaged extra with ours. And therefore, generation by generation, as Prabhupada says, they become more and more pure, just by the fact that they're chanting the holy name, right? Just, many times in many conversations when Prabhupada is talking about samskars, he said that it's not even needed. He will say that, simply by chanting the holy name, you'll become purified. All the processes of samskars and everything are fulfilled by, but he does specify pure chanting of the holy name. Until we get to this stage of pure chanting, we utilize the facilities and the means that are given in the sastras and by the Lord for purification, to aid us in our devotional service, not instead of. And so it's not that we're breaking everything that will happen. The child is still a part of our family. It's not like all of a sudden everything will change. No, he's still within our family, and he has to follow the rules of karma and the level of karma that we're suffering or enjoying, whatever. And therefore, he came to our life in that way. We can also understand but it's also the child's karma that by the form of Garbhadan, we're attracting a certain being with a certain karma, right? And so it was his karma due to the purification that we're going through Garbhadan and through Krishna consciousness, that we were able to attract a certain level of jiva, a certain jiva with a certain karma, with a certain background, with a certain destiny. And so it goes a little bit of both, right? But that's already predestined by the Lord, which is kind of contradictory, that nothing happens without the desire of the Lord. But the Lord already knew that you were going to do that form of purification. You would be such a devotee that you would attract such a being. You're simply following in his desire. So it's a little bit free will and eternal desire of the Lord are kind of contradictory in one way, but we do our best, and therefore our best is also partly samskars.
And a thought came just in my mind, because samskars act in different way. In both directions, we may perform, let's say, Garbhadan samskara, and we attract a soul who we think we purify through our acting of samskaras, but this soul maybe can purify our whole family tradition by his presence in our family.
Yeah. I wouldn't say so much that we're purifying the soul. I would say more like we are making a suitable home for a certain soul to be able to come. It's kind of like we're purifying the place so that we attract a certain being. We have no hand in purifying the being until after he's born. Then it becomes our responsibility. Yeah, but yeah.
It serves also us.
Yeah, greatly. Yeah, as Prabhupada says, these devotees are born in this movement. They're already devotees. We just have to do our duty, not spoil them, not change that. They have a natural inclination for devotional service. We have to fan that desire. We have to encourage that desire. We have to make them into the potential that they have already. Therefore, it's a great responsibility. Great responsibility. You already have a gem. You can ruin it. You can destroy it. Or you can polish it and make it shine even brighter. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish there. Grantaraj, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi.